W.E.B. Du Bois has exciting new work. Last year, researchers discovered an unpublished short story by Du Bois called The Princess Steel. This fantasy tale follows a black man named Hannibal who invents a machine that can see across time and space. Written in 1908, the work is being praised as one of the earliest examples of Afrofuturism. In his 2015 book, Afrofuturism 2.0, The Rise of Astro-Blackness, author Andrew Rollins explains, Afrofuturism is a unique type of art that integrates two things that are rarely combined: science fiction and the black experience. According to Rollins, when we think of black identity, we tend to think of it in one of two ways. Either through a historical lens, where we envision blacks as confined or oppressed, or through a present lens, where we see black identity as part of a social movement. But rarely, if ever, is the black experience imagined as part of the future. Afrofuturism uses fiction, movies, essays, music, and other forms of artistic expression to imagine our future. Some call it black science fiction, but Afrofuturism writer Natasha Womack told The Guardian on December 7, 2015, this movement is a social tool, and it might have the potential to foster equality where social programs and policies have failed for centuries. So today, we will examine this emerging cultural movement by first, investigating the origins of Afrofuturism, second, analyze its modern evolution, finally, implications. African Americans have a past rooted in the horrors of slavery. They face violent racial inequality in the present. If fantasy tales featuring black characters and plot lines can change social stigmas about race, it's worth a second look. Literary critic Bart Deary first coined the term Afrofuturism in a 1993 essay called Black to the Future, which sounds like a dope remake of a Michael J. Fox movie. Let's explore major premises of the movement, and second, apply it to a modern example. Initially, this isn't just writing about black people in space, although that is part of it. The Guardian of January 7, 2014 explains, Afrofuturism begins with a premise that is pretty familiar in science fiction: diaspora, a term to describe a group of people who have been removed from their homeland. The origin story of African Americans is rooted in diaspora. Our ancestors were brought as slaves to an alien land, and since then have struggled to fit in, to put it lightly. Second, Afrofuturism uses storytelling in art, music, and entertainment to depict a future where blacks not only fit in, but emerge as heroes. And the setting of the future is important. In the present, black characters continue to face racial discrimination and inequality. But in the future, they move beyond racism, playing the everyman. And we can look no further than, you guessed it, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. The hero of this film is Finn, who plays a black character who longs to escape the oppression of the Empire. The Huffington Post of February 2nd, 2016 calls Finn the most important Star Wars character of all time. He serves as a bridge that moves from a past when black heroes didn't exist to a future where he instantly becomes a role model for children of color. Afrofuturism was reborn with the deaths of Eric Garner, Michael Brown, and Tamir Rice. Suddenly, just as writers like George Orwell used the futuristic 1984 to critique present-day governments, Afrofuturism evolved to incorporate social justice and began commenting on the present. Let's examine how this movement now functions, first as a social critique, second, as a blueprint for the future. Initially, Ferguson changed everything. As Dr. Reynaldo Anderson told the Nassau Weekly on October 11, 2015, before the Ferguson riots, Afrofuturism went far into the future to escape the black struggle. But when the riots began, Afrofuturism took on a new role, using the future as a magnifying glass on the present. For example, look at the singer Janelle Monáe. Monet's music videos, Primetime and Many Moons, were a response to Ferguson, exploring Black oppression using cyborg robots and elements from Blade Runner and Star Wars. Second, Afrofuturism provides a blueprint for the future. In an October 24, 2015 article on the Afrofuturist website, Octavia's Brood, author Alice Marabe explains that social justice movements in Afrofuturism are like peanut butter and jelly. They're good separately, but better together. She explains that equality movements often lack creativity. Essentially, as much as those fighting for social justice want a better world, they rarely imagine what that world might actually look like. As she describes, we have to dream new worlds into existence before they can ever materialize. As tragic as the deaths that inspired this change were, Afrofuturists are now using their work to describe a utopian America free of oppression. And that sounds great, right? But if just dreaming of things made them real, I'd be Mrs. Idris Elba by now. Let's consider two implications of the Afrofuturism movement. First, although Afrofuturism paints a future worth modeling, how accessible is it to Black Americans who continue to face racial prejudice and inequality? In September of 2015, Alice Marabe attended a symposium called Ferguson is the Future. As she wrote in the aforementioned Assault Weekly, panelists discussed what else? Black people as sci-fi and as the future, or how futurism can be used to dismantle systems of inequality. And though the symposium was well-intended, it wasn't all kumbaya. Several audience members began to mock the Ferguson street protesters. It's not a good look when an event about social justice held at the elite Princeton campus dismisses the work of activists taking pepper spray on the front lines. This forces us to consider, how accessible is Afrofuturism to those who need it most? Black Americans struggling with poverty, low income, systematic oppression. It's a lot easier to dream of the future when you're not trying to survive today. Second, Afrofuturism is moving beyond arts and culture into the realm of science. In his 2016 TED Talk, Roy Tizana introduces us to people who have really cool jobs. Future scientists. People who literally sit in rooms and try to predict the future, then make policy recommendations to economists, the military, and NASA so they can better anticipate and prepare for unlikely scenarios. And these future scientists have started hiring science fiction writers. In fact, as Susanna explains, science fiction writers are some of the best predictors of the future. In 1953, Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 predicted the development of earbuds, which he called thimble radios. And in 1968, Arthur C. Clarke's novel 2001: A Space Odyssey describes a portable flat-screen newspad. As Susanna concludes, the best science fiction fulfills the words of philosopher Michel Foucault. It makes windows where there once were walls. If pop culture really is this influential in determining the trajectory of society, it is time we become more deliberate in how Blackness is being portrayed in science fiction. Or else, we risk preparing for a future that will continue to exclude us. In San Francisco, DJs are spinning tracks made from Afrofuturist musicians like Salam Balik, who use futurist sounds to turn nightclubs into safe spaces for people of color to dream. For the Black community, the past will always hurt, and the present remains flawed. But the Afrofuturism movement might finally provide a portal to a better future.